Hello everyone. Welcome back to our channel. If you are someone who believes that no matter how dark life becomes, there is always a light waiting at the end of the tunnel, then this story today is for you. Now, take a deep breath, open your heart, and listen closely. This is the story of a 60-year-old man named Mr. Daniel, a man who had everything once: wealth, respect, a beautiful home, and a loving family. But one day, life turned its back on him, and at an age when most people are preparing for peace, he was forced to face the most painful truth of his life. Mr. Daniel was not born rich in his early years. He worked as a simple clerk in a small office. He had dreams, but not for himself. His dreams were for his children. He woke up before sunrise, walked miles to reach his workplace, saved every penny, ate simple food, and spent his entire life building a secure future for his family. He would often tell his wife, "One day, our children will live a life better than us. One day, they will thank us for our sacrifices." And for years, that is exactly what he did. He sacrificed his happiness for their dreams. Slowly, life began rewarding him. He opened a small business. It started growing. People began to respect him. His children went to good schools. He built a beautiful house with his own savings, brick by brick, dream by dream. By the time he turned 50, people in his town would say, "Oh, look at Mr. Daniel. He is a successful man. His children are so lucky." But success is a dangerous thing, because sometimes the more you rise, the more you forget who held your hand when you were down. As the years passed, his children grew up. They became busy with their own lives, their own families, their own priorities. Phone calls became shorter. Visits became rare. They had time for everyone, except the man who gave them everything. But Mr. Daniel, he never complained. He would sit alone in his chair every evening, looking at the empty dinner table, telling himself, "Oh, it's okay. They must be busy. At least they are living well." He found comfort in silence, in memories, in the sound of the old clock on the wall. Tick, tock, reminding him that time never stops, even when your life does. Then came the storm. A financial crisis hit his business. Deals were canceled. Partners turned away. In a matter of months, everything he had built over 30 years started to collapse like a house of cards. He went to his children for support, not for money, but for emotional strength. He hoped they would say, "Father, don't worry. We are with you." But what he heard instead shattered him completely. "Dad, we have our own responsibilities. We can't get involved in your problems." One by one, everyone he trusted, everyone he loved, turned away. His house was taken. His savings were gone, even his memories. And at the age of 60, Mr. Daniel found himself standing outside, with no place to go, and no one to call his own. Imagine giving your entire life for others, only to be left alone when you needed them the most. But what Mr. Daniel didn't know was that this lonely night was not the end of his story. Mr. Daniel walked without knowing where his feet were taking him. The city lights blurred behind his tears. Each step felt heavier than the last. He carried one small bag. Inside it, a few clothes, an old photograph of his wife, and a rusted pocket watch that had stopped ticking years ago. He sat on a park bench until dawn. People passed by. No one noticed him. For the first time, he understood what loneliness truly meant. Not the absence of people, but the absence of belonging. When the sun rose, he whispered, "God, if there is still a reason for me to live, show me the way." And somehow, as if life heard him, a soft breeze brushed his face and carried a distant sound: children laughing. He followed that sound and found a small faded building with a board that read, "Home of Hope, Shelter for the Elderly." He hesitated at the gate. Should he walk in? Would they even take him? But his tired legs made the decision for him. He knocked softly. A nurse opened the door, a young woman with kind eyes. "Can I help you, sir?" she asked. Daniel lowered his gaze. "I have nowhere else to go," he said quietly. She didn't ask questions. She simply smiled and said, "Then you're already home." Inside there were people like him, forgotten faces with gentle hearts. They welcomed him with warmth that money could never buy. He was given a small bed near a window and a cup of tea that tasted like comfort. That night, lying on a thin mattress, Daniel looked up at the ceiling and whispered, "Maybe losing everything was the only way for me to find peace." Days turned into weeks. He began helping around the shelter, watering plants, fixing chairs, reading stories to those who could no longer see. The small garden became his favorite place. He planted roses and named each one after someone he missed. The red one was for his wife, the yellow one for his daughter, the white for the forgiveness he hoped his sons would one day seek. Slowly, the sadness began to turn into meaning. The other residents started calling him Uncle Daniel. His laughter returned, softer but real. One afternoon, a young filmmaker visited the shelter to make a short video about forgotten elders. He noticed Daniel sitting under the tree, surrounded by the roses. He asked, "Sir, after losing everything, how do you still find the strength to smile?" Daniel replied with a calm voice, "When you lose everything, you stop fearing loss. That's when you start truly living. Life doesn't always give second chances, but when it does, it comes quietly, disguised as a new morning, a kind word, or a stranger's smile." The filmmaker was moved. He recorded their conversation and posted it online. Within days, the video spread everywhere. People from around the world wrote letters to Daniel, thanking him for reminding them what matters most. Some sent donations to the shelter. Others came just to meet the man who taught them hope. Among those letters was one familiar handwriting. His eldest son. It said, "Dad, I watched your video." I cried. "I'm ashamed of what I became. If you'll allow me, I'd like to visit." The next weekend, his son arrived. He stood silently before Daniel, unable to speak. Years of pride melted into tears. Daniel looked at him gently and said, "You don't need to apologize, son. Life has already taught us both enough." They embraced, found father and son, broken and healed at once. That moment became the beginning of many reunions. Families returned to visit their parents at the shelter. Some decided to volunteer. The Home of Hope began expanding, funded by hearts that Daniel had touched. Years passed. Mr. Daniel grew older but not weaker. He often said, "The true meaning of success isn't what you build. It's who remembers your kindness when everything else is gone." When he turned 75, the town honored him with a small ceremony. They planted a tree in his name, tall, strong, and rooted in the same soil where he once arrived with nothing. Standing under its shade, he smiled and whispered, "Thank you, life, for giving me one more chance." And that, my friends, is the story of Mr. Daniel, a man who lost everything at 60, but gained something far greater: peace, forgiveness, and purpose. If you ever feel like your world is falling apart, remember this. As long as you're breathing, please like this video, share it with someone who needs hope.